So welcome everyone. I'm Maureen Burford and I'm the director of Creative Lives, a nonprofit that I founded to help children thrive and reach their potential. And we share an innovative approach to teaching and learning, Ellen Tadd's framework for wise education, which is based on her discoveries, her keen observations of our human energy system or our chakra system and its fundamental role in human development. And the big idea of this approach, which is what we're going to talk about today, is that honing well function across the chakras yields optimal learning and development for every individual. Before I go too far into what the framework is and how we've applied it at Creative Lives, I want to share a brief story from the field. Last summer, a mother came to me and said, Maureen, I'm desperate. I don't know what to do for my daughter. She's in second grade and I had to pull her out of school due to severe anxiety and homeschool her for the second half of the year. And I'm afraid she's going to end up on medications for the next umpteen years of her life. Is there anything you can do to help me? And I said, you need to take our training. So she came into our 9-week course in the framework, our Foundations 1 training last summer. And just this September, I received a note from her. Maureen, my daughter is back in school with all capital letters, no issues, triple exclamation point. She goes to school happily every day and uses a strategy that I gave her from the training whenever she feels afraid. I can't thank you enough. For me, that outcome wasn't so surprising, but what was so gratifying was that it was through studying this approach and applying it herself that a parent could have that outcome. I think we could imagine that child's whole trajectory forward being different because she was empowered with tools from this approach. And as we go through this chakra system today and its applications, I also want to demonstrate how powerful it is in a classroom setting, in a math class, in a history class, in a character education class. So the chakra system is really a mechanism that we all have, and it exists to support our potential. It's been observed around the globe by cultures through the ages as 7 energy centers that reside in our human energy field. And they work together as a system, just like our organs work together to help our bodies be healthy. They also correlate with places in the physical body. They're in our human energy field and they relate to places in the body from the top of the head to the base of the spine. And we know more about the system than we might realize because we all have a chakra system. It's working every day to help us in engaging with others, in realizing our potential. But we might not be thinking about it so much. When we feel a swell of love in the chest, that's our heart chakra blooming open. When we feel anxious about speaking in public and our throat gets tight, that's our throat chakra operating, and so on. So today I want to walk you through Ellen's discoveries about the system and why they're so important to helping children in this really challenging time for parents and schools and families. I love this little guy with his ready to take off pilot uniform. And so, yes, we know more about the chakras than we might know. A framework for wise education takes it a step further, and it translates Ellen's understanding of the system into an organized structure that can help us in our approach to teaching and parenting. But Ellen would add about the chakra system that it's through this system that we receive and digest and express our life's experiences, and that the chakras deal with every aspect of our nature. So she, over the course of more than 10 years, was observing these centers really closely to figure out, is there a correlation between well-functioning chakras and people doing well in their lives? And there was a very profound one. Is there a correlation when the chakras don't seem to be functioning as well and people are struggling? And again, very specific correlations between poor function in this system and children with depression or anxiety or a lack of engagement, any number of the challenges that we see happening for kids today. So she translated her understandings then and distilled them into a framework that we can all use, even if we don't fully understand or see the chakra system ourselves, we can understand. I'm going to back that up.
Sure.
Okay, so right there, tagging that point back. So she's distilled her understandings gleaned over time into a cogent and practical framework for education. And this framework contains 7 categories. They're linked to the function of the chakra system. And these categories really help me and other teachers and parents organize our approach so that we're really thinking of this as a holistic checklist. Am I attending to each of these aspects of my child's development or my student's development and learning and well-being? So each of the 7 categories supports the whole of the system, and that makes it holistic. It's also true that one individual's chakra system, when there's a group, then it's a group system. So we can think of it as helping individuals, groups, and even communities. These are the things that our communities need in order to thrive and be well. The framework also contains principles, attitudes, strategies, and supportive environments that can help the chakras function well. Because Ellen found there were specifics of these attitudes, actions, environments that support well function, and many in our culture that actually cause problems in the chakra system. And we're going to look at some examples. So I think it's helpful to walk through the 7 framework categories. So let's walk through these 7 categories, their associated chakras, and the attributes that are associated with well function. Some of the attributes, because they're complex, and I don't have time to go into all the details like I can in our courses. So let's walk through the 7 framework categories and what Ellen has discovered about the chakra system that's so helpful for us to know in teaching, in parenting, counseling, anything that we do that supports the well-being of children. Each of the categories is interconnected. So as we go through, imagine this in your own life. Imagine what it would be like to have well function in that particular category or chakra. And I will talk about some of the attributes that happen when the chakras are well functioning and a few of the things that can really be problematic when they become dominant or diminished and aren't integrated as well within the system. So the first framework category is inspiration. We name each one for the emphasis of the chakra, even though each energy center is more multifaceted. So the first framework category, inspiration, it's linked to the crown center at the top of the head and associated with feeling inspired and enthused to learn, and feeling a sense of connection. And these things really help us walk through challenges. When the center becomes diminished, it feels like discouragement, which can lift fairly quickly. This center can open and close quickly. But if that discouragement persists, that can become loneliness and depression, which is a really serious problem for young kids and teens and adults right now across our country. On the flip side, if this center becomes dominant and a child has dominant function in this category, they're overly excited and they're not making good decisions, which is why we have to watch out for kids and teens so much. And even in our own lives, we have to watch out for this. So that's the inspiration category. And the next one is focus and discernment, which really helps temper inspiration. Focus and discernment are associated, linked to the third eye center, right in the middle of the forehead. And this center is associated with the focus and concentration and that brings about wise perception. It's through focus in this center that we see context. This is critically important because context helps us understand our relationship to what's going on, our connection with others, with the natural world. Context helps us perceive the consequences of our choices and actions. When this center is functioning well, a child is making wise decisions. They're digesting their learning and making meaning from it. And it dissipates fear. So they're able to navigate challenges without being overcome emotionally. It's a very significant center, and Ellen refers to it as the kingpin, because when this center is functioning well, there's a positive cascading effect throughout the whole energy system. When it's diminished, this would be a child who's struggling to focus. It could be symptoms of ADHD. It could be that they're not digesting their learning, they're making bad decisions. And that, of course, over time will impact other parts of themselves. They'll start to feel less confident. So there's a lot we can do to support this center in a home or a school environment. When it's dominant, this would be a child who's perceiving and has wisdom, perceiving clearly, seeing context, but isn't implementing that, not integrating what they know and putting it into action. The next framework category is self-esteem. Really a beautiful center. It's a little more complicated than the upper two because self-esteem is generated through what we think about ourselves and our attitudes. And it's also affected by the attitudes and words of others. So when the center is functioning well, a young person feels good about who they are. They feel comfortable to speak up and express. And they're curious to learn more about themselves and others. It's this wonderful, relaxed feeling of, I like myself, and I'm learning. When it's diminished, this would be a low esteem, a feeling of not being good enough, perhaps, being afraid to speak up and ask questions, or it might be a child who likes themselves but doesn't want to put their voice out. They just don't feel comfortable speaking up. And on the dominant side of this center would be a child who really wants to be heard, probably in order to feel valued. So they're looking to be speaking up, they want to be doing really well, they might be perfectionist about getting everything right so that they're good enough. Or they could even be bullying, wanting to have power over another child. And what's so interesting is in writing this center, when somebody's feeling low esteem, we actually want to help them feel that it's okay to be a small part of the whole. They don't have to be so big. They're okay. And that helps them bring in the other side of, oh, you know, I'm also really capable. And if somebody's feeling really powerful and over-asserting themselves in class, we actually want to affirm, you are powerful and you're part of the whole. So the next center and category in the framework is the category of good intentions. And this is linked to the heart center, right where you'd expect. When this center is functioning well, it's associated with feeling warm and caring feelings for others, wanting the best for ourselves and others. Courage to be ourselves. Forgiveness when we make a mistake or someone else does. When it becomes diminished, this center is, oh, we just did that fast forward thing again. So when it becomes diminished, this center shuts down usually due to hurts. And those hurts can be coming from one's own attitudes. I don't like myself very much. That can hurt the heart, or the behaviors of other people. So since this is just happening, we'll go with it. The dominant heart center on the other side would be somebody who's overly generous. So a diminished heart might be a child who feels jealous or envious, doesn't want the best for others, or feels self-protective, has a hard time feeling the care that we want to give them. When it's dominant, that would be a teen or child who's overgiving without discernment. The next center down is the center of emotional well-being, the category of emotional well-being in the framework. It's linked to the solar plexus chakra. And this is associated with emotion and feeling and a sense of harmony. A feeling that we can accept what's happening because everybody is learning. Yes, correct. You know, when you're thinking about JAM or any company that you're running and you're thinking about, intuitively, we gravitate towards, I mean, if we're being ourselves, we gravitate towards well-function. And if we're being wise, we start to see all these different angles are important. So it's cool to be affirmed by looking at this, I think. All right, I'm going to just start with the heart again because I got discombobulated. All right, they're all fixed. So the next framework category is the framework of good intentions. And this is linked to the function of the heart chakra right in the chest where you'd expect. And it's associated with wanting the best for ourselves and others, this reciprocal feeling, this warm, loving feeling that makes us feel glad to be alive and connected to others. It also is associated with the courage to do that, to do the loving thing, which requires the wisdom of the third eye center. It requires wisdom because our heart is not a discerner, it's a radiator. So that old adage, follow your heart is not such wise advice. The heart doesn't know, it loves. So we need to pair it and have it integrated with the system. When it's functioning poorly or becomes diminished, this is usually due to accumulating hurts. And a child with a more diminished heart may be self-protective. They're kind of blocking their heart to protect it from being hurt. They may feel some jealousy or envy of others and have a hard time expressing care. On the dominant side, this is a child or teen who is really giving a lot but without discernment. So I love Ellen's definition of loving, which is doing the thing that supports the growth of another. And that requires discernment. So pairing the heart and the third eye, powerful combination. And certainly as parents and teachers, this is how we want to be relating to our students. We want to care about them and we want to be discerning about what helps them grow and become their best. And that often includes addressing weaknesses. How can we do that in a loving way? The next framework category is emotional well-being. It is linked to the function of the solar plexus chakra, which is right below the rib cage and above the belly button. And you're probably aware of this chakra when you get rumbles in your stomach when you're nervous about something or feel sick to your stomach, or feel sick to your stomach when something upsetting happens. This center is a center of feelings. And also harmony, a sense of harmony that arises through the fact that everyone is learning and we're all connected. So we can feel connected to somebody that we disagree with. The sense of connection when it's working well is informed by wisdom in our third eye chakra. However, and unfortunately, one of the biggest mistakes, and it's kind of a global mistake that we make, is to place our focus here instead of here. When we over-focus in this center and lead with feelings, they become dominant. We see this all around the world. A dominant solar plexus can be emotionally overwhelmed, emotionally reactive, volatile, expressing anger or a lot of grief. It can also be expressing anxiety. So any person struggling with anxiety is struggling with the dominant solar plexus. This is an epidemic right now. That can lead to wanting to quell feelings by abusing substances or becoming addicted to other things. Addictions stem from a dominant solar plexus, a desire to kind of suppress feelings. And not healthy. The other side of this center is that when it gets dominant for too long and gets so hard to live with, people tend to shut it down and it becomes diminished. And then they lose empathy. And that's also dangerous. A lack of empathy for others means we can do things without feeling the consequences or feeling empathy for how our actions are affecting others. And the diminishment in the solar plexus can also cause people to start to overuse their wonderful intellect. This is a good time to talk about the intellect. It's not part of the chakra system, but it's our fabulous computer that we all have and that we want to help to function well. When it leads, it's like letting your computer drive your car and pick where you're going. You want to be in the driver's seat, and you want to have your focus and your wisdom discerning the journey, your intellect helping along, and your feelings being productive and adding a lot of, and conveying emotion and passion for where you're going. So the third eye really helps the solar plexus function well, and it helps the intellect also play its part really well. And you can feel as we go down the chakras, they get more complex. The next one is the most complex. It is the category of persona in the world. Who we are as we move out into our lives and relate to other people. And Ellen also calls it the identity center, and it's in the lower abdomen below the belly button. This center it's the center of opposites in a way. It's that internal balance of our directive and our receptive sides. We tend to think of people as extroverts or introverts, but really, we all have both capacities. One might come more easily to some than the other, but all children and all teens and adults can learn to move into this interior balance where you're feeling both a directiveness and a receptiveness, and right in the middle there, it's kind of both at the same time. When we're teaching, we want to be aware of what's coming to us from students. So we're listening while we're speaking. So this center of an interior balance of giving and receiving, acting in way, that interior balance, I should say, really informs how we move into relationship. Giving and receiving, acting or waiting, leading and following, giving and receiving. It's our strength and our sensitivity combined. Beautiful. And it also has to do, this category in the framework, with bringing our creative self out into the world. Anytime that we're expressing ourselves, whether we're with people or not, our identity chakra is in action. So when this center is not functioning as well on the diminished side, this would be a person who's emphasizing their receptivity. They're less willing to speak up, put their ideas out there. They're following more easily than speaking up or leading. And it doesn't feel so good, because often we are blending then to follow the will of others rather than uncovering our own creative identity and who we're here to be. On the opposite side, a dominance in this center may be a desire to prove one's value, to have power or control in a situation in order to have needs met or feel safe or feel good about oneself. And that dominance is equally out of balance. The beautiful thing is, in a classroom setting or a home, we can do things that naturally move this center into balance and get it integrated with wisdom, which is like the fulcrum point. When we're wise, we know what to do. When an athlete's in the zone, as they call it, they're in that flow of making the next good decision, whether it's to receive the ball or kick the ball in a soccer game, and that's coming from being in their wise view. So the final category in the framework is the category of discipline, which is linked to the base chakra at the base of the spine. And this center is associated with the disciplines that help us actualize our potential. Not disciplining someone, but being disciplined, being self-actualizing. And that includes gaining skills in an array of areas. Skills that support our physical well-being, skills that support our inner well-being, skills that support our cognitive development. And it also is the center of responsibility, of working hard. Dominance in this center is somebody's working really hard, but not necessarily wisely. Or is working hard but without enjoyment. It means this base is not integrated with wisdom, with inspiration, or maybe with curiosity. And work can begin to feel like drudge. So there we have the 7 categories in the framework, each based on the chakras, each associated with helping us thrive in all these different aspects of ourselves. And I thought today it might be interesting to teach a technique that we use with students in sometimes covert or sometimes overt ways to help them feel the difference between when they're focused in their belly and how decision making goes from there, and when they're focused in their wise view. And I thought maybe Kate would be our volunteer this morning. So I'm going to grab Kate a chair and I'm going to have her come up and we're going to try the TAD technique together. Okay, the TAD technique. We call it this because Ellen really found that through comparison, we can really feel the difference between the function of the solar plexus and the third eye. And that's so helpful to know because we have such a cultural habit of being focused here. So Kate, I want you to imagine that you are really late for an important date. I'm late for an important date. And in this case, it's not because the cat ate your homework. It's really, it's decisions that you made, okay, that have caused the lateness. So you have the responsibility in this situation. Right. And it's important that you're there and you're really late. So now close your eyes. And I want you to put your focus right in your belly, right below your rib cage, and focus there. And when you feel like you're focused there, just put your palms down on your lap. And now, navigate this situation. You're late. You're focused in your solar plexus. How do you feel? What do you do? How do you proceed? Just let yourself feel that. And when you're ready, you can talk about it.
How do I feel?
Mm-hmm.
Frustrated.
Frustrated.
Anxious.
Anxious.
A lot of frustration.
A lot of frustration, growing frustration. I can feel it. Okay, good. So we don't want to linger there too long. How many of us can relate to this feeling? Anyone listening to this conversation can relate. Okay, so now we're going to experiment again. Close your eyes again. And you're going to lift your focus out of your solar plexus, up like an elevator, as though it was a little elevator. It can come up through your chest, up through your throat, and it's going to pause. And do you mind me tapping you? I'm going to tap where you're aiming for, right in the middle of your forehead. You're going to aim right there. And you're going to bring your focus to that point. And imagine there's a round window in the middle of your forehead that opens up. And holding your focus there. It's the same situation, you're late, but you're holding your focus in your forehead. How do you feel? What do you do? How do you navigate? What's different? And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and let me know, but hold it, yeah.
Okay. But in the original, with the first feeling, which is where the feeling went for me anyway, was like this heavy weight, and when I moved the feeling to my head, it felt like lifted, more relaxed.
Good. So stay there for another second. Stay in that lifted, relaxed feeling. Go back and close your eyes. So Kate's saying it was heavy, inner solar plexus, overwhelming, anxious feelings, a lot of frustration. Instant relief getting to the third eye. Now, from there, what do you do? How do you handle a situation of being late? Imagine it's a real scenario. What will you do from holding your focus in your wise view or your third eye chakra?
Well, I feel like the first thing I would do is whoever I'm going to be late with, give them a heads up.
Right. Simple phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're that's quite a difference.
Yeah.
So we can imagine looking at any situation from here and feeling not quite sure. Feelings limit our view. They shrink our reality because it's kind of like feeling your way down a busy street in New York. You're with your hands. You're aware of what's kind of right around you, but you're not really seeing the big picture. When we go to here, we see the bigger picture, we see the context, and perhaps the next step for Kate might be to say, yeah, maybe I won't stay up that late watching a movie when I have an early morning, or I need to make sure I set my alarm, whatever the backup corrections would have been. Thank you, Kate.
That was great.
You were a great guinea pig. I'll give a quick classroom example, and it might not be appropriate to teach this directly in your particular setting, but this was a character education class at a school right here in the Upper Valley. And it was the first time I taught it to a group of third graders, and they were so good at making that shift that I gave them a challenge. Can you all look at something that really worries you about the health of the world and this planet? And everybody had something they were worried about. And then I asked them to go and experience that worry and what they could do about it from their solar plexus. And you could feel the energy in the room sink, literally. So much so that the teacher and I caught each other's eye. And then they flipped their hands when they were ready, and we moved their focus up to their, what we call their wise view, the focus point here. And the energy brightened, and they stayed there for a moment, and when they were ready, they opened their eyes. And here's what one little boy said about his experience. Down in my solar plexus, it was like a burning cauldron of rage. I was so angry at what people are doing to the planet and to each other. I was churning. This is his language, I'm paraphrasing a bit. And I just felt so upset. But when I moved to my wise view, it was like I stepped onto an island of clarity. And I was calm. And I looked around. And I realized that all I need to do is play my part. And I think that I'll use this technique for the rest of my life. That's how he ended his sharing. Every one of those 18 kids had a profound sharing. That example is so common. We feel anxious and upset when we don't know what to do. But from here, we see the next wise move. And for him, it was the realization, I'm not responsible for all of it. I'm responsible for me and my part. Beautiful. So we have now, after years of, I don't know what happened on this slide, but we have a little picture of the slide within the slide. We've created an online training program, and we're training teachers from around Vermont, New Hampshire, and even across the country in the framework approach with 2 basic courses that are each 9 weeks long, Foundations 1 and Foundations 2. And you can learn more about Creative Lives and what we're doing at our website, creativelives.org. And if you're watching this program today, I even have a discount code for you to join our January courses if you're interested. Creative 18. I also want to mention that this beautiful new book about the framework, Ellen Tadd's Framework for Wise Education, is now available on Amazon. It's a beautiful read. I read it again and again. I do find, however, that because the information here is so new, it's very, very helpful to teachers and parents to actually take training and begin to get this work in their own bones so they can bring it to children in the ways that are appropriate for them. And finally, here are just a few common questions that come up. Do I have to teach children about chakras? I don't. They don't need to understand the theory of the chakra system. They need the tools and the strategies. They need the environments that I can create. They need me to model it. But they don't need to learn about their system unless it's appropriate in the setting that you're in. People often say, I don't meditate. Can I get this? Yes, this is not all about meditation. There are attitudes that we learn through meditation that are helpful, but this is about going out into our daily lives, coming from wisdom and balance and compassion, the ability to navigate what's challenging in our work and in our personal lives. You can get it. And finally, how does this integrate with what I already know? Well, teachers know a lot. A lot of them know a lot more than me, and parents as well. This will integrate to affirm what you already know, help you tweak a few things that could use tweaking, help you really understand why there are things you don't want to have happening at your school, and give you some voice about some extra affirmation about why. And finally, I think this system really helps us to be innovators. There are a lot of ways to support healthy function in each of these centers in a group setting. Without being the therapist for the kids, we can turn classroom behaviors around. We can help kids become who they're here to be and guide them on their path. So it is an integrated approach that we're looking for. And I have to leave off with a student from that same class where the little boy had the insight about his wise view and his part in the world. In that same group of kids, I taught them a basic inspiration practice where they closed their eyes and thought of what most deeply inspires them in order to stay in a positive state of mind. And this is what one little girl said. She was one of the last to speak. Her hand went up slowly. Everyone in the room turned to look at her because obviously when she spoke, they wanted to hear what she had to say. So there was a lot of attention, and she said, "The thing that inspires me most is that for the rest of my life, I get to be myself." That is our mission at Creative Lives, to help each child feel that, to help every person on their path, and to support the well-being of the parents and teachers and counselors who are guiding them. So thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you to JAM, Junction Arts and Media, and to AmeUp for hosting this morning, and to Kate for being our willing participant in the TAD technique. And I hope to see you at an upcoming workshop or training where you can really experience how this positive approach impacts children for the better, their teachers, and also really our culture as a whole. So thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Can we ask you some questions?
Oh yes, actually, please. Let's have some questions.
I'm curious if you ever had parents, teachers, counselors, or people in your training cry during the trainings from their own inner process of healing as they become aware of the system.
Just recently, almost every course, some tears will come up, and this is a good thing because tears are feelings that maybe have been pent up and are releasing. And in fact, one early educator wrote that, she wrote in one of her reflective papers, "I cried every night after this course for the first 4 weeks thinking, I will never get this, I will never turn my life around. And then, after the class on the throat chakra, I decided I was going to work on it. And I've been practicing holding a positive attitude every day. And I had a breakthrough. And from that, I became more clear. And I've been able to navigate my incredibly busy life with a feeling of well-being." And for an early educator, that's a big deal. She had 2 jobs. Many of them do. They aren't paid very well. They're working very hard. They have multiple kids with multiple needs. And at the end of the day, she had her own family and a second job. So that breakthrough was a big deal for her. It's a good question. Yes, Kate.
Are there anyone who participates in the course? Sorry, thanks. Are there people who participate in the course who are not educators?
Yes.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I'll repeat the question. So the question that I'm hearing is, are there people in our courses who are not educators who are taking the training? Yes, we do open the door for that because sometimes those people have an influence on others who are working with students. Our focus is on, and our agreement with Ellen is on supporting those who work with youth. But I do have people in the course who are, and certainly anybody who's a parent, which you are, would benefit. So yes, absolutely. In fact, I had a nurse practitioner in a recent course because she's so keenly interested in thinking about how this could also apply in the field of health. There are many applications of the framework, and we're beginning with education because it has such a broad sweep.
It seems to me with the crisis of early child care, that there's that informal education that's not in the public school system yet, but that we're trying to expand pre-K and daycare. Are you working with that, sort of stage of education?
Yes, and actually a lot of early educators are keenly interested in this holistic approach. They're already thinking fairly holistically because they have to attend to all these different needs of their kids. So in October, actually early November this year, I'm presenting at the Vermont Association for the Education of Young Children, and I noted that 77 have signed up for the talk in advance out of 400 or so attendees. This is a good turnout. It's a sign that this is catching on in the early education community in our state. And I think, as an early educator who's enrolled in our course now said, I find a lot of repetition of certain kinds of trainings that I've done already. This was new, and it was holistic, and I was really interested. So yes, yeah.
I'm going to just pepper you, but
Keep going.
And if you don't mind repeating my question too, because I'm not on the microphone. But what about, do you work in any formal or informal way with the mental health community? And how do you find, what reception do you find?
We have, so the question is, do we work with those in the mental health community, and what reception do we find? I've actually encountered a lot of openness. I've had three or four mental health counselors take our training and immediately adopt tools from the framework in working with their clients and have such powerful results. So I think there's an openness to new ways of understanding mental well-being, and it's linked to physical well-being and emotional well-being. These are all integrated. So yes, there is interest, and I'm so glad for that, because those people are often able to work one-on-one. It's a different venue, equally powerful. Classroom teachers is a different setup. So yes, mental health for sure.
My last question, and I know we need to wrap up, but is, could you speak to the connection between the system, and I know the name of your organization is Creative Lives, but specifically to creativity?
Yes, so the question is, could I speak to this chakra system and its relationship to creativity? So there are two centers that I think are keenly involved in the creative process. One is inspiration. And there's this fabulous bass player, I wish I could remember his name, who said, when I get stuck and I'm uninspired and I can't be creative in making a new piece, what I do is I go and remember a time when I was really inspired. Well, that's a very crown chakra opening practice. It's basically the little exercise I was teaching this little girl. Think of something that inspires you. So having the crown chakra open feels like having a flood of positive energy that informs the creative process. The other chakra that's really engaged with creative expression is our identity chakra. Because when we're creating a piece of art, there's an action, and then there's a receptivity. There's a back and forth with the canvas. In theater or in film, we're keenly wanting to be aware of that dynamic of give and take. And I think all the chakras come into play. Curiosity, of course, insight about what's the next creative move. But these two in particular, the crown and the identity chakra, are about expressing that creativity. The throat chakra when we're speaking aloud in creative ways. And I love Ellen's definition of creativity, which is, I'm paraphrasing, but it's all the different ways that substance can be arranged. So that means that we are each creativity itself. We are all arranged in very unique and beautiful ways. We are creative. And creativity extends to how we dress, how we arrange our homes, all those amazing creative choices, part of our identity chakra. Great questions. Thank you so much for having me this morning.